Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a brand new week and welcome to a brand new edition of what we call the Shifting the Culture podcast, where we talk about the different artists and events that have impacted this culture we know and love as hip hop, as well as the ones that continue to do so to this very day. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Conscious Kurt, aka the Professor in the flesh, as always.
And this is King Khan, aka the Evil Genius, live and direct. What's going on, man? Back for another week.
Yes, I'm happy to be back. Yeah, it's been a great couple days. We got to spend some time together over the weekend, which was a lot of fun, especially yesterday. We had a very good time. Our father was in town. First time he actually came to visit us here in Atlanta. Although not much time as we would have liked to have had, the time we did have, we made it count, and that's all that matters. So I had a good weekend doing that. I just got back from the gym, exercising today, and I'm ready to get this show in, as well as my other wrestling podcast, Clash of Champions, later with a lot of heavy shit to talk about.
All right, that's what's up, man. Yeah, it's been kind of cold the last few days, man. So I'm glad that the weather's getting much better because we couldn't really do much with 13-degree weathers and shit, and just being bad outside. So glad that the weather's starting to get a little bit better, a little bit warmer.
Oh yeah, it's way better now compared to the way it was like Friday and Saturday, especially. Fuck me. Yeah, just being outside. Like I remember getting out of work on Saturday. It was like torture, bro. It was colder here those last few days than it was my entire trip in New York and New Jersey a couple weeks ago. Shit was no joke.
Yeah, the weather's been really bad. Like January is, I would say, like the worst month of the year as far as weather. So yeah, hopefully this is past. We get through this month pretty quickly and get to springtime. I'm ready for the spring this year.
Yeah, spring should be good, and I'm gonna be working on my spring body right now, and eating healthier, eating cleaner, among other things. And yeah, there's a lot of leveling up and upgrading I need to do in these next few months, and that's one area I'm going to be doing it.
That's what's up. Yeah, new year, time to get new goals and time to crush them, man. So good luck with everything.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I know you saw those comments the other day about the whole Cat Williams and Kevin Hart thing that Dave Chappelle said, talking about how Cat Williams doesn't talk about any of the white comedians. He only talks about the black ones. He's not really calling out the people he should be calling out. He's only targeting a specific group. And yeah, it looks like this thing is only going to get crazier as the months go on. And I feel like this story, in addition to like the Oprah story with Taraji P. Henson and also the Diddy stuff coming out lately, I feel like a lot of people who've been like running the empire for years are like really starting to get exposed and called out in a way we've never seen before and at a rate we've never seen before. This shit I feel like is only the beginning. Only the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this year is starting off with a lot going on already. Like we talked about the Cat Williams interview, and I don't know. I don't 100% agree with Chappelle because I do feel like Cat Williams wanted to get at people who've been talking about him over the last few years. So I don't think it was
Racially motivated.
I don't think it was racially motivated. I think he needed to get shit off his chest, and he needed to clap back at a bunch of people that were talking shit about him over the past few years. So I think it was more or less about that. But he did bring up Gary Owen when he was talking. Yeah, he did talk about Gary Owen and talked about how Gary Owen didn't sell out, and he stayed true to himself and true to true to the being a comedian into the culture. So I don't get where Dave Chappelle is coming from. Maybe it's because his stand-up flop that he's trying to make some headlines. So that's kind of like how I see that.
Damn, you really didn't like that special, huh? Fuck.
Nah, that shit was whack. Yeah, that shit was pretty whack, man.
Was that like the Nostradamus of all of his comedy specials? That'd be a fair comparison?
No, I don't. I feel like Chappelle hasn't been the same in a while, man. Like I don't know. The last few stand-ups, like we talked about it already, man. It hasn't been up to par and how the level of greatness you think he is. So I don't know. I just haven't been feeling his stand-ups. I've seen other stand-ups that have been way more funnier. Like I don't know if you've seen Joe Coy's stand-ups that's been on Netflix. Those shits are pretty funny. I feel like those are way funnier than the last Dave Chappelle's that have been coming out.
Nah, I didn't get the chance to check those out, but I will though. Good looking out on the suggestion, but
Yeah, definitely check him out. I think he hosted the Emmys or recently, but he has a bunch of stand-ups on Netflix. Just check out, but he's mad funny, yo.
Yeah, and speaking of the Emmys, they had like a Martin reunion during the Emmys with like Martin, with Carl Anthony Payne with Tashina Arnold with Tisha Campbell. Yeah, it was nice. They had like a nice brief like reunion like on the Martin set. And yeah, everybody was kind of talking about how Martin Lawrence like didn't look healthy and like something kind of looked off on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I really noticed personally was that he didn't really talk much. I don't know if that had anything to do with his health or something else, but that's just the only thing that really stood out to me, considering that like he was the star of the show, and yeah, obviously the show's called Martin.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen him in a few different things, and I don't know, something is different with him. He doesn't seem the same. He doesn't have really like the same demeanor as he had before. Maybe life humbled him. Maybe something else health wise is going on. But I don't know. I could tell something is not the same right there. I don't know. Kind of like how I don't know. Maybe he's cloned, or some people like to say, but I don't know, man. He seems a little bit different to me.
I mean, it could be anything. I know he's supposed to be doing Bad Boys 4. I'm not sure if they already started filming it or they're about to start filming it, but I know he has that coming up.
I didn't even see the third one, honestly. I gotta go check that out.
To be honest, I like the third one more than the second one. I'm not a fan of Bad Boys 2.
The second one was alright. It was just long as shit, though. I felt it was a little too long, but it was alright.
It wasn't just the fact that it was long, it was just too fucking much. That movie was just way over the top, way too Hollywood. Yeah, that shit was just overkill.
Yeah,
Fucking overkill.
I can get that. I get that. I can see what you're saying. Yeah, there was a lot going on. They even had like some fake Haitians in that. People with like a fake Haitian accent, which was
Yeah.
like totally off and mad disrespectful
Oh
to the
yeah,
Haitian community.
I
So
remember. Yeah, I remember.
yeah,
I remember watching it with mom once, and she saw that scene, and yeah, she was pissed. She was pissed when she
yeah,
saw that.
yeah. It wasn't a good look. Make the Haitians look like they were Jamaican and shit, or I don't know. It wasn't a good look. And yeah, that movie it had a big budget, and especially coming off of Bad Boys 1, I felt like they tried to do too much. And like, yeah, it didn't really translate as they thought it would. But nonetheless, I thought it was a decent movie still, with all that considered.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were still parts about it that were good. There were a lot of the action scenes that were good, even if a lot of them were too fucking much.
Yeah.
And there were some funny ass scenes in that movie, like that one part after Martin gets shot in the ass. They're like sitting at that like Circuit City store, and they're like talking to each other, and everybody thinks they're like talking all sexually to each other because it's like all loud and
Oh
everybody can
yeah.
hear it. Shit was crazy.
Yeah, that was funny. And then when the kid came up to the door, knocking on the door I think he was there to pick up one of their daughters.
Yeah,
I think
Martin's
Martin's daughter.
and they were
Yeah, and they were like they were grilling him and shit, and pull out the gun on him and shit. So that was funny.
yeah, he's like, you ain't you a virgin, good, because ain't gonna be no fucking tonight. I'm gonna hunt your ass down, son.
Yeah, that part was funny. Yeah, that was probably one of the funniest parts.
I always heard those stories even back in the day that Martin Lawrence was an asshole, like especially on the Martin set. There were like multiple stories I heard back then of like him like yelling at the cast and like threatening to fire people. And then obviously there was that infamous situation with Tisha Campbell that kind of led to the end of the show. So yeah, like he's had like years of kind of those issues at least back then. And even that one time he got banned from SNL. I don't know if you ever heard of that story, but he actually got banned from SNL for some jokes he told.
Oh no, I don't recall that, but
Yeah, this is like in '94. Yeah, like it was like around the time like I think his main stand-up special came out. Yeah, it was like in '94. And yeah, he said a bunch of fucking crazy ass jokes that got him in a lot of trouble. And yeah, he hasn't been back on SNL since.
yeah, he was mad raunchy back then. So I could definitely see that. But I don't feel like Martin was an SNL type of comedian. To be honest, he's not that type of character.
Now that I look back at it, a lot of those black comedians from back of that era weren't. Like Chris Rock was on there for like a cup of coffee. It didn't work out. Damon Wayans was actually on there in the '80s. That also didn't work out. So yeah, for some reason, a lot of them, it didn't really transition well for them. Dave Chappelle was never on there, or Bernie Mac. But I guess we had In Living Color in that sense. Like even though they didn't fit in there, like In Living Color was a much better look.
Yeah, definitely SNL was for definitely different crowd, different audience.
Much different audience. But in any event, let's get into our main stories of the day. As the tension between Drake and Yasiin Bey is continuing to escalate ever since we last spoke to you guys. As after Yasiin Bey said what he said about Drake's music being pop and being like target music, shopping music, and likable and all that good stuff, Drake responded by sharing an interview from Method Man on his Instagram story, where Method Man's basically talking about how hip hop's a culture, hip hop's like a way of life, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself, all that jazz. And then In that story that Drake shared on Instagram of Method Man's interview, he put up a comment saying, "What Umi say again? Let me shine my light, King. Don't change up now." Referring to the song from Black on Both Sides that Mos Def had, "Shine your light on the world to see." Yeah, he was referring to that, and then it also escalated even further as there was a screenshot of the interview from Yasiin Bey, and under the comments, Drake left a comment saying Bahamian bucket. And in Canada, the word bucket is slang for crackhead, junkie, etc. So yeah, it's looking like it's getting ugly between these two, and I'm not sure what Yasiin Bey's response is going to be. But if he does respond, I hope he does respond with a good ass diss track. Always love to hear those.
I don't see it really going anywhere else. I felt like, yeah, I expected Drake to at least respond because he's one of the most pettiest artists, and anytime somebody mentions his name or says something about him, he responds in some way, some way or another. So I'm not surprised that he went went this route as far as commenting back. But if you look at like Yasiin Bey or Mos Def's career, he's always been conscious and he's always been about the true essence of hip hop. He's always been about having a message. So I felt like Yasiin Bey was really trying to say that Drake's music didn't have a message, which that is partially true because some of his music doesn't, which more of his commercial music. But he does have multiple sides to him as an artist. As far as Drake, he does pop music, he does rap, he does R&B, he can do some reggae, he can do some Afro beats. So he can some reggaeton. He could dabble into different genres. So I can see where Yasiin Bey is. I can see where he's coming from in this case, where he's saying that Drake's music doesn't have a message because sometimes it doesn't, which is true. But at the same time, like he did re-release like the last album for all the dogs, and he did drop those extra tracks like that tracks where he's getting at Joe Budden and the other track with J. Cole, Evil Ways. So he did spitting and spitting some knowledge and have some has a message in some of those songs. So I don't feel like Mos Def might have listened to some of that part of his music, but I feel like when you look at Drake as a whole, you might not box him in as like a hip hop artist. You may he's more of like a commercial artist more than anything. He's more like a pop artist at this point because once you get to a certain level, you can't really be considered. I don't know. He's not really considered hip hop, all like 100% all around, all the way around. I don't know what you think about that.
I would say he does hip hop, but I wouldn't say he just falls into that category exclusively. So
Right.
yeah, I would say he does fall into the pop category also. But fuck it, there's nothing wrong with that. That's his prerogative. If he wants to make that kind of music, if people like it, if he likes making it, fuck it, that's his prerogative. The only thing I don't like is just how petty he acts and like how immature he acts with
Yeah,
the
he
way he
does.
responds.
Yeah, he does. And yeah, I felt like I said on the last episode, Yasiin Bey, I feel like he just the way he said his. I felt like the comment. There's nothing wrong with what he said. I felt like there was a lot of truth to what he said. I just felt like the way that the way the comments came off of it was just like, what I'm saying, it was mad. Like, it came off like mad disrespectful, and it came off like like he was like on a higher level than him. We'll see. We'll see what happens if if there's any other back and forth from there. But I don't really see that in going anywhere further than that. I think it's done. I think it's dead from here.
Yeah, and even kind of started like over the summer because there was like a review for like Drake's poetry book where like Complex got accredited like poets to like review it. They basically called it like a book of puns. And there was also another interview in Complex where like a writer was talking to Bun B, and the writer said that Drake's music will never be as good as Mos Def's, or like he won't ever be as good as Mos Def. And then after the article was published, Drake sent a message to Complex saying, "Can you please from now on get the hottest Instagram models in the world to review my poetry book as opposed to the president of Mos Def's fan club? Okay, thanks." And then he left like a laughing emoji afterwards.
Oh, so maybe that could have been where this whole started. Maybe that's the reason why Mos Def felt like he needed to respond in that way. Maybe that was just his first chance he had to really get back at Drake. So if that's the case, if Drake's the one that really went out there on the limb.
Yeah, like I said, bro, just the way he comes off and the way he responds to these situations, it just further plays into that narrative that he's soft.
Yeah, and like he's mad petty. Like I don't hear like Jay-Z going back and forth with people online talking about if he's great or not. Like he already knows what he is and what he means to the culture. Why are you wasting your time? When he goes back and forth like this, it just shows that he's maybe insecure about his position in hip hop. Maybe he ruffled some feathers that maybe something subconsciously that Drake is, thinking in his mind, like, damn, maybe I'm not hip hop anymore. Maybe he got, lost his way during his successful career. Maybe he lost, the true essence of what he originally started music. So, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, it could be that. Like him and Nicki Minaj kind of remind me of each other in that sense, where they just take certain things way too personal, and they always think like somebody's out to get them. In every single last case, they feel like somebody's out to get them.
They got all the awards, they got all the album sales, they got the popularity. Like, what do you need to go back and forth with people online for, or what somebody said in an interview? Like, let's let it go, man. You're already established as one of like the generation's biggest artists. Like, who cares what some blog has to say or some comment somebody left online? Like, who cares? Like, I feel like he's bigger than that, and I feel like he lowered himself to to a level that he's so far past.
Yeah, I feel like just in general, kind of this generation of artists have become too sensitive, and I feel like it also plays into like the generation and era we live in now of like people being too sensitive, all the cancel culture stuff, all the oh you said something mean to me, oh you said something bad about me, let me come back at you, let me argue with you back and forth all day long. I guess in that regard, since like our society maybe became too sensitive, a lot of the artists that we enjoy listening to also became too sensitive in the process.
Yeah, like, yo, just let it go, man. It's not that serious. I never hear Nas coming out saying, "Oh, somebody said this in an interview," when they've spoken about Nas like a bunch of times. So I don't see him, Jay-Z, or any other big artist like coming out and responding to interviews and whatnot. So I feel like he's too big for that. He's on another level. Like, he shouldn't be stooping to the come bringing himself down to these levels.
Yeah, it used to be back in the day, artists would beef about like, like personal street shit. But nowadays, it's like artists beefing about like an Instagram post or some shit you said about me in an interview or some shit you said in a Facebook post that might have been a subliminal shot. It's like, what the fuck did the world come to?
Like, you can't even have an opinion anymore without somebody catching feelings or getting butthurt about it. Like, I don't know, man. We're just society just in a weird space right now, man. So
Just some of these artists these days. Like I'm not saying they're not talented and all that. They definitely have a lot to offer, but just some of their personalities and just some of the ways they respond to things and the way they behave. Yeah, just definitely becomes a turn off for me.
we're in a different age, man. This is social media era where people are gonna be online talking shit and like just stay off the internet, man. Like, if you don't want, if you're, it comes with it. If you're gonna be popular, if you're popular or if you're great at what you do in this day and age, people are gonna talk about you whether you like it or not. As an artist, you should expect this to come. If you're going to be a successful artist, people are going to talk about you, whether you're an artist, whether you're an actor or a celebrity. It comes with the territory. You're getting all this money, all this fame. People are going to talk about you. So just let it go, man. Get offline, find something else to do, man. You got all the money in the world. You can find something to get into. But to go online and on your phone and listen to what people are commenting and saying about you, I don't know, man. I feel like they got better things to do than that.
Yeah, and especially when you make shit public and you post shit for the public, you can't expect the public not to comment on it. Like, look at the whole Cardi B thing, for example, a few weeks ago with her situation with Offset. Like, she posted that audio of like her like going off about how he sucks, how we did this and that to her, and all this other shit. And then a few weeks later, she posted like another audio of like her complaining about like people talking about it and commenting on it online. It's like, yo, you made that shit public. What the fuck were you expecting people to do?
Exactly, man. Just keep your shit private. If you don't want people to talk about it, just keep it private. Keep it to yourself. Not everything needs to be online.
Okay, so let's get into our next topic. In a recent interview with the Art of Dialogue, D1, who we've spoken about on this show before, actually mentioned that NWA, among other hip hop acts, do not deserve their status of being called legends. And this is parts of what he had to say in the interview. What do we do with that? Once we acknowledge what you have contributed to the genre, your whole career, and if we acknowledge that you've contributed a bunch of negativity, a bunch of violence, a bunch of disrespect to women, what do we do? Do we call you a legend, or is it like, wait, we don't need to call you no legend? I think that calling people legends in hip hop is also a force of what helps to perpetuate negativity, and that's a trick of the enemy. That's the devil's work at its finest. We're going to make it to where y'all start to call people legends and immortalize people inside of hip hop. And the main thing they've contributed is the glorification of violence, the disrespect of women, the glorification of drug dealing and drug use. Like, that's crazy. We need to take the legend status off of a lot of the people who we call legends in hip hop, and that's going to hurt their ego. But that's going to help our community. So, King Khan, what do you think of that?
So I get what he's saying, but at the same time, so what do we do about all the movies that came out that show all of everything that you're talking about? What about all the movie
And
directors,
video
all
games.
the actors, all the video games? Like, just I understand what he's trying to say, but at the same time, like it's like a slippery slope, and he's opened up a can of worms that I don't feel like just it's not an argument that he's gonna win, because then you're gonna go against everybody and everything that's happened between now and since NWA or whoever else came out. So I don't know, man. Like I feel like he's trying to fight a battle that he's not gonna win. I'm sorry. Like they've already, like NWA, for example, they've already solidified themselves as legends, whether he wants to say it or not. They did start like they did, or like then I would say like people who pushed like gangster rap to the forefront at that time. But you got to understand how we got there, because a lot, if you got to go back to like the 60s and the 70s, when think we're just coming off of things being segregated and the civil rights movement and whatnot. So there's still animosity between blacks and also the police and people in power. So this is kind of like where that type of music kind of like was inspired from, kind of like pushing back against what's going on in the hoods and whatnot. And not to mention, is not the reason why some of our hoods and some of like these artists were like that is because there was crack going on. There was a lot of stuff that the government pushed into our hoods, in our neighborhoods, that made us act and react in a certain way. So I can't really say that they're not legends, because they were just speaking on what was going on around them in their society. And it was different times. 30, 40 years ago was a totally different time frame from what he's speaking on now. But I don't know. What do you feel about it?
I also get what he's trying to say, and I do think that he means well. But regardless of whether or not you agree with NWA's content or any artist who makes music similar to their content, the music still stood the test of time. The music still made an impact, and the music was still good music. Whether you like the message or you don't like the message, from a production standpoint, from a lyrical standpoint, and a quality standpoint, it was still good music. And whether I like an artist or not, as a person, or their actions, their behavior, whatever, if they make good music and they're able to make that good music stand the test of time and have a long career from making good music, that deserves legendary status when it comes to it, regardless of whether or not you agree with their message, the way they live, the way they carry themselves. If they make good music and that good music stands the test of time, they deserve to be called legends in that regard.
Yeah, they did a lot for for the culture as a whole. So like I said, like you said, like I get where he's coming from, but I don't know. He's turned into like this Captain Save Hip Hop, and I don't know. I feel like you can't just pick and choose who what you want to call out. I feel like you got to call out everything across the board, and if you're gonna call out these rappers, you got to call out these movie directors, these video game creators, all these people putting this negative shit in the society. You got to call everybody out, not just I would say single NWA out or a group similar to them, based on the type of stuff that they talked about.
I'll admit myself, there's songs from NWA that rubbed me the wrong way. There's a lot of shit they said that I didn't agree with, but I always maintained that that was the experience that they had growing up where they grew up, and that was their life. If that's what their life was, I don't want them to lie about it. I want them to be honest about it. That's one thing I always want out of any artist, out of any musician, no matter what the genre is just be honest. And when NWA was talking all that shit, that's what they were doing, being honest. Did I agree with the way they said it a lot of the time? No. Did I agree with a lot of the things they said all the time? No. But I always respected their honesty, and I will never take that aspect of it away from them, as well as the music quality away from them either.
Right. Yeah, you could like the music if you want. Like you said, I don't really agree with all the messages and everything that they talked about. But at the same time, like they were one of the first groups to kind of push back against the system and to push back against like the higher powers. Like another group like such as Public Enemy, around the same time they came out, they were kind of pushing back against the government and the establishment, just a different way, and it had a different voice to go about it. But to say they're not legends is, I don't know, man. I felt like they're one of the first groups to actually, speak about what was going on in their hood. So I respect them, for what they brought to the game. At least I could see that part of it.
The biggest thing I will say about the whole NWA thing is if you don't like so much like the way they talk and the way they carry themselves, why don't you look at the circumstances that caused them to be that way? If you focus on that and you try to put a stop to that, maybe people won't come out that way anymore. Maybe they won't make that kind of music anymore. Won't have to make that kind of music anymore.
I feel like he's pointing the finger at the wrong person. He'd be pointing at the people who put the crack and all these drugs in our neighborhoods. We don't live in Colombia, like, or wherever these drugs came from, South America or not. How did it get over there? How did it get into these hoods? And people, when there's a lot of drugs and a lot of violence going on, like, people, all they're doing, trying to do is survive, man. And it does get ugly. And NWA was just just talking about the ugly side of what happened in their neighborhoods and what they had to go through growing up. And it's not pleasant to hear or talk about, but this is what happened. This is what they saw. This is some of the stories that happened, to them or the people that they knew. But this is their life, and we gotta appreciate them at least, going against the government and speaking out on certain topics. At least you can respect that. If you can't respect their music, at least what they stood for, and going against the establishment. At least I can, you gotta at least respect that.
And they even said themselves, like when they made the song Fuck the Police, everyone was coming for them. Everyone was shitting on them for it. And after the Rodney King incident happened, they didn't think they were so crazy anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, man. I just felt like, yeah, it just D1. I get what he's trying to say, but he's gonna make a lot of enemies just the way that he's going about, calling people out and saying people are not legends. I would say just stick to making your own music and try to change people that way. Stop trying to go, trying to call out like Rick Ross and Meek Mill and other artists of the past who have already established themselves to try to make a name for yourself. That's kind of like what I'm getting from it. I would tell him just focus on making good music, and everything will fall into place. But you can't be like calling out legends and saying they're not legends because they did this and they did that. You got to go back a little bit further and find out why they were talking about the things that they were talking about and why that stuff was going on in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I hear that. And even Rick Ross said that about him too, that it looked like he was only using Rick Ross's name and Meek Mill's name to get himself attention and get himself clout. And now with this situation, there might be a little weight to that. But like I said, I think he means well. I think he's personally dope from the rhymes I've heard him spit. But certain situations like this, he does come off as like being the fun police.
Exactly. So he just got to find a different way to get his message across. Just not the way by calling out legends or people already established in the game. And I haven't heard him say, speak about all the good things that some of these artists do for their communities and their hood, like building, different things in their old neighborhoods, giving money back, things like that, donating to charity. So I don't hear him talking about that because that's a lot of things that I've seen multiple times. Rick Ross has done turkey drives and other things, to give back to his community. You got to talk about both sides. You can't just, make it seem like it's one-sided.
Yeah, but we'll see who he ends up calling out next. I'm sure this is only the beginning of all this, and whatever, it gives us more stuff to talk about, so I'm all for it.
We'll see who calls out next.
This past week marked the anniversary of one of my favorite hood movies from the early 90s, which we'll actually get into a little bit later. But as I was watching this specific movie and thinking about how good a lot of the music was in it, it had me kind of reminiscing on some of my favorite soundtracks over the years. Some of my favorite movie soundtracks that kind of made me like really intrigued to see the specific movie it was promoting. And in some cases, the soundtrack would even be better than that set movie itself. And King Khan, I want to ask you, what are some of the soundtracks that stand out to you, and maybe one of the first ones that you could think of that really stood out to you?
This is kind of tough, man. There's a lot of great soundtracks, and I feel like that's something that's missing in the culture. Like there was a lot of good soundtracks that used to come out, especially during the '90s. That, like as you said, like they really hit home and they really made you want to go see the movie because the soundtrack was so dope. Just some that stood out to me, I would say like the Nutty Professor soundtrack was one that kind of stood out to me. Another one that I liked is the Friday soundtrack. I don't know if you remember the Friday. The Friday soundtrack was pretty dope. It had a lot of dope songs on there. Just to mention a few, we had the Friday song by Ice Cube was on there. Keep Your Heads Ringing with Dr. Dre. You had Rick James, Mary Jane was on there. So
Oh
you had a
shit.
Hoochie Mama, Two Live Crew was on there. So there was a lot of a mixture of old and like newer songs on that album soundtrack. So I think that was a dope soundtrack to me. Don't Be Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. That soundtrack was pretty dope as well. It had that Wu Tang Winter Wars on there. It also had the Renee by Lost Boys was on there. Can't Be Wasting My Time, which was that Mona Lisa track with a featured Mr. Cheeks was on there. So there's a lot of dope songs on there on that album as well. Let's Stay Together by the Isley Brothers. So that was another one of the
Yes.
soundtracks that I loved as well. So what are some that you remember that stood out to you?
One of the really early good ones that I really liked a lot that I actually bought from the store was the New Jack City soundtrack. Bro, that shit
Oh yeah,
is
that was dope.
fucking fire. So some of the hottest artists in music at the time are all on it, from Guy, Keith Sweat, Ice T, Troop, Levert, and Queen Latifah all on the same song together. Johnny fucking Gill, that Color Me Bad song, I Want to Sex You Up, that was on there too.
Oh yeah,
Bro,
that was
that
a dope
soundtrack was
classic.
mad popping. Also, that Christopher Williams song, that I'm Dreaming shit. There were jams on that soundtrack for days, bro.
Yeah, definitely a dope soundtrack. There's a bunch of other ones that came out.
Also, Above the Rim. Above the Rim had a dope
Oh, yeah.
soundtrack too.
Yeah, that had the Regulators on there. That was dope.
They had the song, yeah, they had Regulate. That's probably the song it's most famous for. Also, that song Pain from Tupac, that actually they played at the beginning of the movie. Also, the Afro Puff song from Lady of Rage.
Oh yeah, that was a big track too.
Such a dope track.
Yeah, did we mention Set It Off? Did we say that?
Ooh!
Set It Off was
Oh
another fire
shit!
one. Set It Off was
How
another
can I
fire
forget?
one. And another one around that time, Soul Food. That soundtrack was dope too. There was a lot like it's
Yeah,
like
but
mad movies during that time were dope.
getting into the Set It Off soundtrack real fast, they had that song "Don't Let Go" from In Vogue.
Yeah.
They had that
And
"Days of Our Lives" song from Bone Thugs.
yeah, and that was peak Bone Thugs. That's when they were in
Ooh.
their peak.
Yeah, it was around
Peak
the
Bone
same
Thugs.
time as Crossroads and everything, first of the month and all that.
Yeah, definitely a dope track.
That "I'm Missing You" song also with Brandy and like Tamia and Gladys Knight and Shaka Khan. Yo, that shit was mad sad. Yeah, that
Yeah.
soundtrack had mad tracks on there.
What else? What about Rush Hour? I think from what I remember, Rush Hour. I think I had that Redman and Drew Hill song was on there.
Yeah, How Deep Is Your Love? How deep is
How
your
That Deep
love
Is
for
Love.
me? Tell me what it's
Oh, that
gonna
also
be.
had. Oh yeah, that also had the Jay-Z and Ja Rule. I think that was Ja Rule's intro or
Debut. Yeah,
debut.
debut. Yeah, can I get a fuck you?
Yeah, yeah, and then Faded Pictures by Case and Joe. That was a dope one.
Oh shit.
That was a dope
Oh
one.
shit.
Yeah, man, that was another dope soundtrack as well.
Yeah, but soul food. Let's getting into soul food real fast. That song, a song for Mama from Boys to Men. That shit always gets to me every time. That song always gets to
Yeah,
me.
definitely. That was a good track. Definitely, especially for Moms and Mother's Day.
And I know you fucking love this song, that "What About Us" song from fucking Total. I actually saw the video for that song yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah. I forgot that song was on there. Yeah, that was a big track during that time. Missy and
What about
Total.
you?
Yeah,
What about me?
that was a
What
banger right
about
there.
us? What we gonna do? And fucking we're not making love no more from Drew Hill. Fuck me, son. That's like one of their best songs.
Yeah, definitely. That was up there.
Also, that Monica and Usher song "Slow Jam."
Oh yeah, that was on there too. Oh, can't. Oh shit! I just remembered one. You're gonna forget
Which
about
one?
that. How to Be a Player. I don't know if you forgot about that.
Oh
How to Be
yeah.
a Fucking Player.
I mean, I'm not that crazy about the movie, but I remember that song on "Big Bad Mama" from fucking Foxy Brown and Drew Hill. That song
Yep.
was mad dope. They were playing that song nonstop, like around the time during that summer.
Yeah, that was definitely a dope track.
But what else was on the soundtrack besides that, though? Was it just that song, or was there like other
From what I know, I don't think it stood the
songs?
like the test of time. That soundtrack, but at that time, that I remember that was a dope soundtrack. A lot of people, Tupac was on there, Ja Rule, DMX, Redman.
Ja Rule. Ja Rule was out in '97.
Yeah, he was on that. He was on there with it was a track with DMX and Cormega. He was on there.
DMX was on there too. This was like
Yeah,
'97. Shit.
yeah. This was like probably this is when they were like probably unknown. They weren't really known like that. EPMD was on there. Rick James, Mace, Cameron, Junior Mafia. There's a lot of people on there on that album. But definitely, the Big Bad Mom was kind of like what made the soundtrack.
That was like peak Foxy Brown too.
Yeah, Pete Proxy Brown. So that was dope. Also, Belly. I know Belly. Yeah, Belly was definitely a dope track. I know a dope soundtrack. I know you don't like the movie too much, but as far as the soundtrack, it was definitely fire. Definitely fire.
Yo, you'll get no argument from me on that. The fucking Made Men and Locks track, the grand finale one.
Yeah, the top shots are with DMX. DMX, Sean Paul, and Mr. Vegas. That's probably one my favorite track on there.
Yeah, it had a solid soundtrack. Regardless of what I feel about the movie, the soundtrack was good.
So those are ones from the '90s. Anything post '90s that you felt like had a dope soundtrack?
There were, I'll get into those in a few, there were, but there's like a few more 90s ones we still didn't touch on. There's a fucking Space Jam soundtrack.
Okay, yeah, that was dope. I had some joints on there.
I know R. Kelly's tainted nowadays, but I Believe I Can Fly was fucking huge when it came out.
Yeah, and I think they had that Ghost Town DJ, not Ghost Town, 69 Boy, one of them booty music, those booty tracks.
Yeah, that
Like
song
booty
they played at
music
the
tracks.
beginning of the movie.
Yeah, Space Jam.
Everybody get up, it's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Here's your chance to your dance. Yeah, that shit. Yeah, that shit was mad dope.
Man, it's not like you remember that. It's not like you listened to that
I
yesterday.
didn't. I just know that shit by heart. Movies and music are very interconnected with me. Like a lot of the music I discovered through watching movies.
Yeah, definitely. Like if it has a dope soundtrack, it make you want to watch the movie. And a lot of the
Yeah,
movies they have the songs in play within certain scenes, and you remember the scene because of the song that was playing in the background and whatnot.
yeah, there was that For You I Will song from Monica. Also the Fly Like an Eagle track from Seal. That's one of his best tracks too.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a good track. Yeah, that was a like little diverse R&B soundtrack.
Yeah, there's a lot of songs specifically when I hear that song, I specifically think of a specific movie. When I hear that song from Seal, Kiss from a Rose, that Kiss from a Rose song, I think
Oh
of
yeah, the
Batman
Batman
Forever.
movie.
Yeah, Batman
Yeah,
Forever.
yeah, yeah.
I like that song a lot more than the damn movie. That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah, that movie didn't hit well. But yeah, now we talk. What about any other '90s ones?
Any other 90s ones? I remember the Best Man soundtrack. I remember being dope. Also the Wood soundtrack. I remember you telling me the New Jersey Drive soundtrack you liked a lot.
Yeah, the New Jersey Drive. It had the Total and Biggie Can't You See was on there. I remember it had like that classic Amazing Frankie Beverly, Before I Let Go, that Beyonce kind of remade a few years ago. The original was on there, and there was a lot of other dope tracks on there. I can't remember. That's a long time ago. I want to say like Redman was on there, Onyx, and a few other people. But that was a dope soundtrack as well. Grave Diggers and a couple other people.
And we'll get into the topic of this movie in a couple minutes because it was the anniversary of it. But another good soundtrack from the early 90s, Juice.
Yeah, that was definitely a dope one.
That Know the Lead song with Eric B. and Rakim, which was actually one of their last songs together, he fucking bodies it. Fucking bodies it.
Yeah, a lot of dope movies, a lot of soundtracks that were, yeah, like you said, were doper than the movies themselves.
Getting into the 2000s, Nutty Professor 2 had a dope soundtrack. Also, 8 Mile. 8 Mile, you gotta put like in your top 5. 8 Mile, a song from 8 Mile won a fucking Oscar.
Oh yeah, Wankster was on there.
Wankster, that Rakim song, RAKIM, was on there. Obviously, Lose Yourself, goes without saying.
Yeah,
And the song 8 Mile was also dope. That was also on there too.
yeah, that was dope. One of the more recent ones that I liked that I've heard is the Black Panther soundtrack. That Black Panther soundtrack was pretty dope.
All the Stars song from Kendrick, yo, mad fire.
And Kendrick and SZA, yeah, yeah, and I like that The King's Dead with Kendrick and Future. That's one of I was playing that song for like 2 years straight after that song came out. I might have to go listen to that. It's been a minute, but that King's Dead when he says "missing with that bullshit," and then go back and listen to that one. That was pretty dope.
Bad Boys 2 had a dope soundtrack. I mean, I feel the way I feel about the movie, but yo, that soundtrack was fire. I remember when that shit came out that summer, yo, they had a lot of fucking bangers on it. Yeah, Shake Your Tail Feather,
Jay-Z.
La 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 from Jay-Z. Yeah, that shit. Also, another one that won an Oscar, another movie that won an Oscar that had a good soundtrack, Hustle and Flow.
Oh yeah, that was dope. Yeah, that one was pretty good too.
Yeah, the Hard Out Here for a Pimp, the fucking Whoop That Trick, which I think is the theme song for the Grizzlies, isn't it?
It might be.
Yeah, I think they play that at Grizzlies games or some shit like that.
Oh, it would make sense. It wasn't. It was the movie was based in Memphis, so it would make sense if they did.
Yeah, it was. Also, that song "I'm a King" with Ti and his crew.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, a lot of great soundtracks, and like I said, like the soundtracks like really made you want to see the movie, and like a lot of the times when you hear those songs specifically, you think of that movie.
Yeah, for sure. If you have a dope soundtrack, definitely can enhance the movie, take it to another level.
Yeah, and also I remember like specifically back in the day, like when music videos were a regular thing. Like when you would watch the music video for those songs, they would have like a lot of clips from the movie in it and all that. You'd be like, damn, now I really want to see this shit.
Yeah, for real.
Hopefully they could bring that back in some way because I remember like towards the latter part of the 2000s, like kind of soundtrack stopped being a thing like the way they used to be.
Yeah, I don't know why they went away from making good soundtracks, but there've been a couple over last year. Like I said, last few years, like the Black Panther one was pretty dope. The Creed 3 soundtrack was pretty decent as well. I know J. Cole and his crew, the Dreamers were all up on that album. With a different, like the whole crew was on there. So those, I would say those are the two that stand out over the last few years. But yeah, it's definitely not like how it used to be in the '90s.
Nah, not at all, or even the early 2000s. All right, but let's get into some of our anniversaries today. As one I mentioned a few minutes ago, this past week marked the 32-year anniversary of the release of the film Juice, starring Omar Epps and the late Tupac Shakur. The movie takes place in Harlem and it follows the lives of four teenagers who just kind of fuck around, skip school, and do a bunch of bullshit every day. But then one of them, being the character of Bishop, played by Tupac, gets kind of obsessed with like having power and having respect in the neighborhood, or what they would call it, juice in the neighborhood. And Bishop and the crew come up with a plan to rob the local corner store, and they end up getting a gun that will help them pull it off. But it kind of coincidentally is on the same night that the character Q, played by Omar Epps, has like a DJ competition he's in. But in the middle of that, they want to do the corner store robbing, and then they'll get back to the DJ competition in time. And as they do the corner store robbing, Bishop gets a little too power hungry with the gun and shoots the man who manages the store. And from that point on, it just fucking unravels.
Mm-hmm.
And Bishop just goes on a rampage with that gun and takes out anybody in his path, even some of the people closest to him. So, King Khan, I want to ask you, I know you saw this movie way before I did. What were your impressions
Yeah.
of Juice when you first saw it, when it first came out?
When I first saw it, I felt like Tupac definitely was the star of the movie. He made the movie. I feel like that was one of his first movies that he did, if I recall.
That was his first
But yeah, he
movie. Yeah, that
definitely
was his first movie.
it was the first one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you definitely could see the talent, and you could see that that he was made to do the movies because he came out very believable in that character that he played. It was a dope movie, dope story, and I like how also Omar Epps was really just starting out. I think that might have been like one of his earlier films as well. So it was just a good story, and you could tell, Tupac, really did his thing as far as like playing the villain in the movie, and yeah, it was just a dope movie all around, and is a classic that stood the test of time. So, what do you think about it?
I love it. Tupac is definitely the star of it, although everybody else brings their A game too. Tupac is definitely the person that stands out the most from it, just similar to how Wesley stands out the most in New Jack City. Yeah, Tupac was a
Yeah.
great villain in this. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I despise the Bishop character in Juice. I hated him. I fucking hated him.
Yeah, he definitely gave you that vibe, especially that elevator scene.
Oh
Yeah, that was
shit.
definitely. Yeah, he
Oh my god.
definitely comes across as definitely like somebody you don't want to mess with, and it
Just
definitely was intense in that movie.
the Bishop character in Juice and also the Nino Brown character in New Jack City, the one thing I say about both of them, rotten to the core. Little to no redeeming qualities at all. And that's what makes for a good villain, though.
Yeah, definitely. They played it to the T, and yeah, it was a dope movie, and yeah, the way it came across out, that's why people love the movie as far as his performance as the villain, and it made it really believable. And
Yeah, and one of the great hood classics of the early 90s and one of the defining hood movies of the 90s, that too. I say like the four defining hood movies
Yeah,
of the 90s are Juice, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and New Jack City.
yeah. I can't go wrong with any of those movies. All of them are classics in in their own ways. And like the music that was in those movies as well was pretty dope. Kind of going back to the soundtracks.
Yes, and that was another thing that stood out about Juice, the fucking soundtrack. Even the beginning of the movie when they play Know the Ledge and the way the opening credits are like with like records, like with the opening credits, they have like a record as they have the person's name in front of it. And then they have all the DJ shit with like the Q character, how like he's really into DJing. Also the music from Eric B. and Rakim, also Big Daddy Kane, EPMD, the Uptown Anthem song from Naughty by Nature, which they play at the end of the movie. Also that
Oh
song
yeah,
Don't Be Afraid from Aaron Hall. Also that track How I Can Just Kill a Man from
Cypress Hill.
Cypress Hill. Yeah, that was also in there too. In the scene towards the end when he's chasing him in the party.
I got you. Yeah, yeah. Definitely a dope soundtrack, and it's not like we said, man. It's another reason why we love the movie, the soundtrack.
Also, not even just the main characters, which were Q, Bishop, Steele, and also Raheem. Yeah, you know the dude who played Steel, right? He was also the same guy. Jermaine Hopkins is his name. Yeah, he was also was the same dude in the Wayans Brothers,
Yeah,
who was their homeboy. He was also in Lean on Me. He was also in the movie Lean on
yeah. I
Me.
remember that. Do you remember the Did you see a couple years ago? I think DJ Drama. He was doing like a promo for his album that he was dropping, and he like recreated like the scenes from Juice, and
Oh,
he got like
nice.
the original members minus Tupac, obviously, to recreate that scene. You should definitely check that out. It was pretty dope. I think Queen Latifah was involved
Yeah.
as well in that reenactment.
Queen Latifah was also in the movie. Queen Latifah was the one who was like holding the auditions for the DJ contest.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think that was a scene that they recreated. So if you could go on YouTube, you could probably find it. Just DJ Drama, Juice remake. But yeah, it was an album or something he dropped a couple years ago, and he like he redid that scene. That was pretty dope.
Also
That was
Samuel
a good dope idea.
Also, Samuel Jackson was in it. One of the girls from En Vogue was in it. She played Omar Epps' girlfriend. Yeah, it had a good cast and a very good story. Really captures that early 90s New York, especially Harlem vibe. And yeah, just not enough good
Yep.
things I could say about that movie and the soundtrack at that.
Yeah, definitely a classic.
Yeah, it's crazy. Tupac was actually recording his first album, Tupacalypse Now, as he was filming Juice. And the album and this movie both came out within only 2 months of each other.
Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah, crazy. He came out with his first album and his first movie within like a 2 month period. And that dude would go on to do even crazier things as the 90s went on, which is another story for another time.
Yeah, for real.
All right, but getting into our next topic, this past week on Sunday actually marked the 30-year anniversary of a special episode of Family Matters where the son character who goes by the name of Eddie comes home to tell Carl, who's the dad on the show, that he was racially profiled by a bunch of police officers as he was driving into a white neighborhood and how once he asked them what the problem was, they told him to shut up. They made him get out of the car and they cuffed him and like frisked him all for no reason. And Carl, who's actually a cop on the show too, initially doesn't believe him because of the fact that earlier in the episode, Eddie got caught in a lie, which was about a speeding ticket. So then when Eddie brings him this story, initially he doesn't believe him. And Eddie is upset at the fact that Carl doesn't believe him because he went through like a very traumatic experience and his dad is a cop himself and his own dad doesn't believe what happened to him. So yeah, Eddie's just really in a bad place from this whole situation. I know a lot of young black men can relate to this situation too, who've gone through that. And Carl, who's a police officer, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, tracks down those police officers and come to find out they were racist and they were racially profiling Eddie. But damn, bro, I'll say, like, as a person who watched that show religiously as I was a kid, one of those episodes that really impacted me the most. And also, this episode was one of my first real exposures to racial profiling when it came to police. I don't know how much you remember this episode, King Khan. I don't know if you've seen it in recent years, but if you do remember any of it, what are things about it that stand out to you the most, and why do you think episodes like this were important to the culture back then?
Yeah, it was definitely important because, like I alluded to earlier, is like this was like what the early '90s, and it wasn't too far
94. It was
removed from this.
94.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it was in the '90s, so the black and white friction, especially with cops, was still going on, and yeah, like I remember when I first saw that episode, it was kind of shocking to me because normally Family Matters it was really like a funny show, but they did have some serious things that they would touch on from time to time, and that was one of the episodes that I remember. One of the episodes that I remember the most because of the things that it touched on. And this was like right after the Rodney King and all that stuff that was going on in LA. So it definitely was something that was still relevant. And as you said, it was one of the first times that they touched on racial profiling in one of the shows that I actually watched, and it kind of hit home. And it was kind of sad because in the character like Eddie, he was like, his dad didn't want to believe him what was going on, and his dad went and confronted the cops that actually harassed him, and he got to the bottom of what was going on. And just a sad story that things like that happen to this day, that people are getting pulled over just because of the color of their skin, or maybe just at the just in the wrong neighborhood, or neighborhood that they're not expected to be in, and they just get pulled over for any reason, and then cops give them a hard time, or they lock them up for something that somebody else wouldn't be stopped for. So it just makes you open your eyes. And I feel like teenagers and younger kids coming up could definitely take some knowledge from that episode, and just know how to try to move differently anytime you interact with cops, and just try to make sure that you get home and not try to argue and going back and forth with them, because we've seen a lot of people who've lost their lives just interacting with cops over the last few years especially. So just kind of just one of the first times where it shows you that racial profiling is a real thing, and it's a episode that really hit home.
If you watch the show Family Matters, like the Carl Winslow character, like he's a very like stand-up guy, good person, man's man, all that good stuff. In all honesty, like the Carl Winslow character for me was like kind of an example of what a cop was, or at least what a cop should be. I don't know about you, but just me growing up on that show, that Carl Winslow character was like that example of like what a good cop was and what any cop should like strive to be. So that's why I like the fact that they use like that aspect of it to touch on the fact that racial profiling does happen. There are bad cops out there, whether you want to believe it or not. And I use somebody
Right.
like Carl Winslow to call these motherfuckers out and, put these motherfuckers on blast to say like, yo, I love this job. I do this job the right way. And you motherfuckers don't deserve to do this job if you're going to do it that way and fuck with people for no reason. So yeah, that part of it I really liked a lot, especially that scene in the diner when he calls them out and he tells like the one really racist cop, like, yo, I don't know why that badge sticks to you because it's pinned to shit. Obviously, he doesn't say
Yeah.
the word shit, but you get my drift. He says that. He talks to the other partner who actually isn't as bad, but he's just following the main partner's lead of, racial profiling. And then he asks the dude, like, why did you want to be a cop? And he's like, I just figured I'd make a difference, like, the good guys against the bad guys. And then Carl says, that's a good answer, but I just have some bad news for you. That partner you have, he's one of the bad guys. Yo, that was a standing ovation for a scene if I've ever seen one, bro. That's one of the best scenes of that whole show, period.
Yeah, for real, that's one of the ones that stood out to me. And when it comes to police, there are, like you said, there are some good cops, there are some bad cops, but it's up to the good ones to call out the ones that were not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Can't be like locking people up for no reason, or if it's not something that life threatening, or just harassing people and or taking people's lives over like a simple thing as a traffic stop. So yeah, it just opens your eyes. And yeah, definitely an important episode. And I feel like people should go back and watch that episode. It maybe can help them in a similar situation to that may happen to them, or something that they know. Because
Yeah,
like I said, this stuff happens to this day.
Yeah, if you ever want to watch this episode, it's available on HBO Max or Hulu. It's season 5 of Family Matters. It's called Good Cop, Bad Cop. And yeah, it's some powerful ass shit. Carl and Eddie, they're the two stars of this episode. They both kill it with their performances, especially Eddie being very vulnerable and very traumatized from his experience. And even at the end of the episode, when like Carl tells him like, yo, I'm sorry, I didn't believe you. I just had to check it out for myself because I'm a cop. And then when Carl tells them like, yo, we're going to file a complaint, Eddie just kind of flips out and says, that's it. After what the fuck they did to me, we're just gonna do a complaint. Those dudes deserve to be fucking put in jail or worse or whatever you can do. And then yeah, Carl just kind of has to talk him down, saying like, "Yo, I understand exactly what you're going through. The same thing happened to me, and I understand that you're angry, but you can do two different things with that anger. You can hold it in and let it eat you up, or you can give it a voice and actually make a change. And that's the reason why I became a cop." Everything in that episode, yeah, just some real powerful shit. And yeah, I know I don't like that show as much anymore. Admittedly, parts of it haven't aged well, but episodes like that were reasons why I still have a soft spot for Family Matters.
Yeah, I feel like we need more shows like that. We in the '90s used to be a lot of like black sitcoms, like family, like and it painted like black families in a positive light. I don't feel like there are enough of those shows these days, but we definitely
Blackish was like that to a degree. Blackish had
I
that
know,
in
yeah,
their
but we
numbers
don't have enough.
sometimes.
There's like one show. There's not multiple shows like that. I feel like we need more variety of those type of shows.
Yeah, at least on the major networks. I'm sure some of those shows are still around, like if you go on streaming services. But as far as the major networks go, yeah, if we could use more of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but one funny part of the episode, although like it's serious for the most part, there was one funny part of the episode where Laura's watching a video from those dudes Shy, that song Baby I'm Yours. She's like watching that video, and then she has a dream that all the Shy dudes like come into the house and like start singing for her, and then all of a sudden they all start turning into Urkel. And she
Wow.
fucking wakes up screaming. Yeah, Urkel was a pop culture icon. I don't care what anyone says. He fucking killed that character.
Yeah, he definitely was.
All right, but getting into a next anniversary, this past week marked the 19-year anniversary of the game's debut album on G Unit Aftermath at the time, the documentary. And this album fucking did work. This album was very anticipated even before it came out. Probably the most anticipated G Unit project besides 50 Cent's first album, Get Rich or Die Trying. And boy, did this motherfucking album deliver, selling over 500,000 copies in the first week, and within 2 months was already double platinum.
Wow, I can't remember. I didn't remember that it sold that much. I know it's a good album, and I know it sold, but I didn't think it was double platinum.
Yeah, shit was huge. I remember when How We Do came out, they were playing that shit nonstop. Specifically, my winter break in my senior year of high school, that was like one of the biggest songs during that whole period.
Oh yeah, and then Hate It or Love It was probably even bigger than that.
Yeah, Hated to Love It was even bigger. That's probably hands down maybe the biggest song on the whole album, but fucking great. 50 and Game fucking complement each other so well. They both body it. But it's just such a damn shame that within like a month or two of this album coming out, they would have their falling out and he would leave G Unit.
Yeah, well, I wish it would have stayed together because I felt like I don't know. The game doesn't get enough respect. I feel like people don't like him because he used to call out, different rappers' names in his lyrics and whatnot. I get that it can get kind of old after a while, but you got to give him credit. He has been in the game for over 20 years now, almost 20 years now, and he's been consistent. And I feel like he deserves some credit as a lyricist and for what he's done for the game. And yeah, this album was pretty solid. It had a lot of singles on here, a lot of dope tracks. West Side Story, Dreams was another one produced by Kanye that was
Higher,
on this
Higher
album.
was fucking dope. Fucking goes hard.
Yeah, so there was a lot of dope. That running track with Tony Ayo, I like that beat. I think High Tech produced it if I remember correctly. But yeah, there was a lot of dope tracks on this album, and yeah, definitely a classic. And yeah, I don't know what you think about the game, his career, and where his career went from here after that album came out.
I feel like, you know how we say that Lupe was kind of the prelude to J. Cole?
Yeah,
I kind of feel like Game was the prelude to Kendrick.
nah, I wouldn't say that. They're not the same kind of
I
artist.
don't mean it like that. I don't mean it as far as like being an artist. I mean it more as on the fact of like, resparking the West Coast movement because like the West Coast hadn't been as popping for a while, but Game's documentary kind of reignited them in a sense.
I give you that. Definitely
And
reinvigorated Dr. Dre. Yeah, well, definitely rejuvenated Dr. Dre's career because yeah, the West Coast because the West Coast was kind of quiet in the early 2000s. The East Coast was killing it at that
the
time.
South
So
was killing it at that time.
and the South,
South
yeah, and
was
the
killing
South
it at that
was
time.
killing it too. But the West Coast was an afterthought at that point, even though they were killing it in the 90s. But yeah, this definitely brought the West Coast back up, and yeah, definitely helped Dr. Dre have another run, and which led to a lot more projects from the game.
I would say out of anybody who was on G Unit at the time, Game was like the one that was the closest to being on 50's level, which I guess kind of shows because he left like literally right around the time this album came out. But damn, bro,
Yeah,
it was fun having the two of them on tracks together while it lasted.
yeah. Even though it was short lived, they definitely put a lot of classics together. And yeah, I wish they would have came out with like a G Unit compilation. I mean, not G Unit compilation, but like I know they came out with the Beg for Mercy, but I don't think Game was a part of that.
Beg for Mercy came out in '03. I think he might have been on a song or
Oh yeah, he
two,
was.
but I think he might have been like either locked up or he might have been not around or something for whatever
So yeah,
reason.
he wasn't
Or
fully
Tony Ray
integrated.
or
Yeah, he
Tony
wasn't
Yayo,
fully.
my bad. Tony Yayo, I might have been locked up at the time. Yeah, maybe it was Tony Yayo who was locked up.
Yeah, after that album, I felt like G Unit would have went to like a whole nother level if they had the Game, Lloyd, Yayo, and 50. They came out with with a joint album together. I know they had to kind of replace the Game with somebody else.
I kind of feel like in a way they replaced the Game with Mob Deep. Like Mob Deep kind of filled the void of the Game
Yeah,
not being there anymore.
yeah, right after that.
Yeah, but that wasn't really the same vibe. Yeah, Mob Deep on G Unit, I wasn't a fan of.
Yeah, they had some tracks though. They had a couple of tracks, but yeah, it definitely wasn't the Mobb Deep that everybody knew and loved. It was a little different Mobb Deep, but nonetheless, yeah, definitely the Game was a solid album with the documentary, and yeah, he went on to have a solid career. So yeah, definitely wish what G Unit would have buried the hatchet, but I understand why 50 Cent never forgave, even though they had that fake reconciliation
Like two
that
months
I
later,
think
yeah, I remember.
Farrakhan tried to put together, but I felt like they didn't get together because of what Game was doing. He pretty much self-sabotaged. Well, pretty much sabotaged the whole G Unit clothing line. He was with remember when he was going on that campaign in G Unit? He came out with like a mixtape. He had
Yeah,
T-shirts,
yeah, they were going
and he
back and
was saying it
forth.
in
They were
songs.
going back and forth that whole year. Yeah, that was like one of the biggest rivalries in hip hop for a minute.
Yeah, and then it kind of messed up the branding of G Unit because G Unit was very very popular. They had the sneakers, they had the clothes, the wife beaters. I remember those wife beaters that 50 used to rock. People were rocking those too. And because of the Game's campaign in G Unit, it kind of like made people question, the G Unit, and some people didn't mess with G Unit like that how they were before, and their clothing line and their brand kind of suffered from that, and I could see why 50 Cent never forgave him because he probably would have made a lot more money, like a long, even though 50 Cent did his thing, but he would have probably reached where his status a lot sooner if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, that was kind of around the time I was starting to get turned off by 50 because he was, beefing with Game. He was also beefing with Fat Joe and Jadakiss and Nas.
Jada, Nas, yeah.
Like he called out AZ on a track once on the Get Rich or Die Trying soundtrack. So yeah, like during that '05 period, I wasn't really as big on 50 anymore.
Yeah, he was definitely losing that shine that he had from his debut album. It was kind of getting, people have their runs, man. They have like a 2 or 3 year run, and then somebody new comes out and you forget about the old person, or you don't mess with them as much. So it happens, man. People have a run. Like Sexy Red is having a run right now. In a couple years, she won't, people won't really mess with her like that. Or even later this year, they won't mess with her like that.
Yeah, Game had a run too. Like from that '05 to I would like say '08, '09 period. Yeah, he was on fire. But I will say this was the peak of it. The first album was by far the peak of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of good production, a lot of good features. Yeah, it was definitely a lot two banging classic singles, and yeah, definitely a great album.
Yeah, and go back and listen to it if you haven't heard it recently. Go back and listen to it. Shit holds up. Trust me, it still holds up even almost 20 years later.
Yeah, still solid, pretty solid.
All right, so before we get out of here, King Khan, any new releases you have to break down for us?
Well, this week has been kind of quiet because we had a few albums that dropped earlier in the year, but we did have a couple singles that dropped over the past weekend. We did have Joey Badass released a new a new single called Passports and Suitcases. So you should definitely check that out. It's more of like a vacation, chill type of vibe track. So definitely check that out. As far as other new releases, there's not really anything else that I could think of. Let me just. So, Nicki Minaj did release a future song called Nicki Hendrix. But other than that, there's really not anything. And, oh yeah, and my bad, I forgot about Lil Dicky came back out. Remember Lil Dicky from the show Dave, and he's
Of course.
dropped tracks in the past. So he dropped a song called Ha 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 that just dropped. So just it's been a kind of, I would say, like a quiet week, but I'm definitely waiting for this next week for that Benny the Butcher album. Hopefully it drops still as expected, but that's the one I've been looking out for a while. Speaking of Benny the Butcher, he did drop that track. I forgot to mention it last week. He dropped that track called Braun, where he's kind of like referencing LeBron in in the lyrics of his song. So definitely should check that out as well in the video.
Yeah, definitely check out for those projects and check out for the Shifting the Culture podcast. We're going to be here breaking down what we love and what we hate about the hip hop culture currently. And before we get out of here, King Khan, let people know how they can continue listening to the podcast and past episodes, as well as how they can follow us on social media.
Yeah, the best way to check out the Shifting the Culture podcast is to visit the website, shiftingtheculturepodcast.com. There you can learn more about us and the show, and also check in with past episodes of the podcast. And if you want to, see what's going on or hit us up on social media, you can follow us, like and subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and also Instagram. Just search for a Shifting the Culture podcast.
Yeah, check us out, holler at us, send us a shout out, whatever you prefer. And until next time, for King Khan, this is Conscious Kurt with another edition of the Shifting the Culture podcast. Take care, have a good one, and whether you're an old school head or a new school head, always respect the culture. Have a good one, guys.
Peace.